there were a couple things in Minnesota that were particularly bad. Okay, so one thing Minnesota did that was just colossally dumb is they got rid of their treasurer. Okay,
I thought you were going to say elect Tim Wolf.
Well, that was yeah. We're not. I'll let you make that comment. So, I'm on the board of a group called the State Financial Officers Foundation. So, and I'll give OJ Oleka, who's the new CEO, did a great op-ed in the Wall Street Journal describing how Minnesota was a penny wise, a pound foolish, because they got rid of the treasurer's office. It made it harder to track spending within the state. So that gets to the issue we just talked about, which is the transparency issue. So that was one particular problem. But then the other thing that's really important to drill down on, if I would just highlight one dumb thing the federal government did, is that Biden actually created a rule that allowed states to base payments on enrollment. So we have a whole Substack written on this that people can read. So when you base openthebooks.com, yeah. So when you base payment based on enrollment and not attendance, that is a magnet for fraud. That was just colossally foolish to do it that way. So the Trump administration is addressing that and fixing it. But there's huge, and we publish this, but there's huge variation, obviously, in how the states give out the money, how much money they get. Texas is the biggest recipient of the funding in this category, $11 billion, because it's the biggest state. But Texas does more of a voucher type system. But what we're trying to do is crowdsource oversight. So we have an internal investigative team. We do great research, great work product, but there's so much of this to uncover. And the Nick Shirley example is a beautiful example of citizen journalism and activism. But all of our organizations can be a part of that solution of just elevating the issue, making the data available, and encouraging and empowering people to take initiative to find the waste and be citizen journalists.
Thanks for bringing it back to Texas.
That's right. Yeah.
Derek, I mean, this is part of what we do here is we search these databases. And do you feel like Texas has enough transparency? I mean, we obviously get pushed back and we end up in court and we're fighting, to get things not redacted and all that. So we still have some issues here. But as Texas goes, do you feel like you can maneuver and get around, or do you think there's a lot more work that needs to be done?
When engaging with good faith actors, I think we probably are at least a little bit better positioned than other states are. Specifically, you have to look at where all the, well, again, to use the correct delineation, where the waste happens, not necessarily the fraud happens. It all happens in broad daylight. You needn't look further than the whole Austin City Council scandal of 2025, remember those days.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the problem is that the reason that everyone was able to find out that they were spending, $10,000 for political donations, while they were spending, all sorts of, personal office discretionary funds for things that did not benefit, not even a subset of taxpayers, but benefited the council member themselves, is because that was public. Yeah, Austin does a really good job of publishing, actually having the I don't know, the lag's probably a little more, but they do have what is essentially an online checkbook. Unfortunately, they also had no shame in the fact of what they were doing, and so nobody
right.
They didn't bother.
Yeah,
they didn't bother hiding. And I think that you saw, though, that became a incredibly potent political issue towards the end of 2025, to the point where Kurt Watson's out there now saying that we're going to have an independent audit. Now, devil's in the details on that, but still, the fact that we actually have a city administration that is calling for not only transparency, but independently verified transparency, that's something I never thought we'd see.
Yeah, and John, I want to get to this, the audits. Like, this is a big problem we have, is like, we have some laws in the books that say you have to audit, but the audit just says, did the money go out? That's like literally the only question. That didn't tell you.
That's not
was it the right amount? Any of that. And then what we're pushing for, of course, is performance audits, which is, did the money go out, and did it go to the thing that you said it was going to, and what happened after the fact? Are y'all talking about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's could be more important. But just on the visibility, you can't have accountability without visibility. So that's a bedrock kind of concept here. But in terms of like how do you really measure? The question you're asking is, how do you measure performance? That's what the average taxpayer, they're thinking. Okay, people don't think of their lives in economic terms like opportunity cost, but that's really how we make decisions and live our lives. And Milton Friedman, of course, had the famous Friedman box where the 4 quadrants and the top left is you spend your own money on yourself. That's the most efficient. The least efficient is spending someone else's money on someone else. Okay. And then the other 2 are you spending your money on someone else and someone else on.
Right.
So gifts and expenses. But government is always in the bottom right quadrant, and how we live our lives is in the top. So people understand this intuitively. And it's the question of how do you get bang for the buck? Well, how do you measure bang for the buck? Okay, and that's where AI and technology is so critically important, because we have the tools now, and we're building the technologies. And when I say we, I mean just the tech sector. But open the books, we have the biggest database of government spending in human history. So in the interim years, when I left Coburn and worked at Open the Books, I did had my own consulting shop, did PR consulting, worked with a lot of Silicon Valley companies, and learned with people building the technologies is that it's really 3 things that build an AI tool, right? It's big data, it's an algorithm, and it's processing power. So data in that universe is like enriched uranium, okay? It can be used for peaceful purposes or destructive. And when you have the right kind of data, it can be very, very powerful and really nourish and encourage human flourishing and freedom. And the way that works is you take our data set and then you merge it with other data sets that measure economic performance. You look at correlations. So a good example we did this year is we looked at 12,500 school districts. We have about 85-90% coverage with our data. That's a lot of school districts. And we looked at a simple correlation of a student achievement, the NAEP scores, and found a slight negative correlation between overhead expense and student achievement. Okay, that's just one little example. And then you take all that data though, and you teach and you use an algorithm, just like they did with ChatGPT. And the better example is AlphaFold. I won't take the time to explain it, but it's in chemistry they looked at protein folding. So we can have AlphaFold for public policy, merge these data sets, teach an algorithm to help do pattern recognition and then pattern prediction. And then we can run circles around anything that we think of as an audit today or performance audit. The technology exists to build those tools that will give us far greater insights. It's like transitioning from the whale oil in the Senate chamber, that we would give tours on, to LED lights. I mean, it's mind blowing what we can, and we're really that's part of what I'm doing in Austin is talking to people about these technologies and how do we build them and how do we.
And that seems to be a good, the lane there is, well, if there's a ton of waste, let's use AI to red flag it so that we know we're wasting our money or not getting our bang for the buck on that. But the thing that's happening in Minnesota is not just bang for the buck; it's like fraud. They're just lying. Right. And so can AI? I don't want to talk about fraud prevention, but can AI evaluate these data sets to red flag things that might actually be fraud and not
yes,
just waste?
Absolutely. Yeah. It can red flag it, but it can also do is show. It can illustrate patterns, and the whole vision that I'm describing, AI in the Future of Freedom, is how we describe our initiative, is that people are right to be very, very concerned about what AI could do to the economy. They're right to be concerned about a surveillance state. But the best way to thwart a surveillance state is to create a surveillance citizenry and give every taxpayer these incredibly powerful tools to hold government accountable. So it's not about individuals delegating their power to some mysterious technology. It's about how do we create a technology that empowers and creates kind of super intelligent citizens. That's what is in reach of building. And that's what we're trying to do. So you give, so like in Minnesota, one is sort of having and this takes years to really build the constituency for people to trust a technology like that, and to prove that this model is more effective than CBO or other scoring models. But then there's a lot that we should do in the immediate, which again is like don't have stupid rules that encourage payments based on enrollment.
That's just sort of flipping it on. It's like, you're not watching me, I'm watching you.
Exactly. Yeah. It's turning the tables on surveillance.
A surveillance citizenry. And that's really what, citizen journalism is all about, is, opening the books and finding out what government. So I want to get into, because we could, I feel like we're already running out of time. I want to talk about so many things. But I want to get to the heart of this question, which is, it's all well and good once the money money's out the door to say that it was spent poorly or that it was stolen or whatever. But how do we figure out a way so that the money doesn't go out the door at all for these? And, Governor Abbott has made an announcement. He's reading the tea leaves, and he thinks, if we don't have our systems in place, there could be massive fraud going on here in Texas. And so he's getting out in front of it. But he's talking about things like, income verification, eligibility checks, things like that, to make sure that our systems are in place that have this, protective system on the front end to make sure that, that people who don't have children can't, open up a daycare or, those kinds of things. Or, like the Feeding Our Future. I mean, they were saying that there were 18,000 meals a day, things like that. Like if they're like, how do we catch those guys before the money starts going out the door?
Yeah, I think the number one is to reduce. I mean, it's hard to avoid the big really, because the big answer is reducing the size and scope of government. It's because it's empowering and really investing authority in the primary decision maker. Is that who is driving the bus? You want parents to be driving the bus. You want individual taxpayers. But the system we have now is we give tax money to the state government, the federal government, and then some of it gets sent back in block grants. That's better than just having it directed to enrollment numbers, for example. But all of these are imperfect systems. So we need to really dramatically reduce the size and scope of government. We've got 400 agencies and sub-agencies when the Constitution only describes 4, maybe 5 if you include the Department of Interstate Commerce. So that really is the answer, is shrinking the size and scope of government. You'll have a lot less fraud. But then on that particular one is, I think income verification is a no-brainer. Making sure that investing the authority, this decision-making authority, with parents, is that let parents make the decision. Because again, that gets back to the Friedman box. Okay, instead of moving it in quadrant 4, you're going to move it to quadrant 3, for instance. It's going to be less inefficient. Okay, it's going to be more efficient.
So you empower the consumers to then go and find the daycare that they want, rather than just giving money to somebody calling themselves a daycare.
Which is very similar to what we talk about with healthcare. Turn and consumers, equip consumers with buying power is really is one of the big reform concepts.